My name is Michelle Ferretti. I'm an oncology therapist with the Life with Cancer program just outside the Washington, D.C. area. I work with individuals and groups, and I also coordinate the psycho-oncology program, the integrative psycho-oncology program at Life with Cancer. It's a curriculum that we developed that is designed to help people deal with kind of the uncertainty that is such a common part of life, but is really very present in the experience of cancer and caregiving. And so our hope is that over the course of the curriculum, people develop the skills and learn to trust those skills and to be able to depend on them as life brings challenges. I am fascinated with the interactions between the mind, body, and emotion. And so we're going to kind of use some of that curiosity in today's talk to kind of learn about what's happening in our body as we connect to others. Just a little bit more about Life with Cancer. Life with Cancer is a program part of the Innovashar Cancer Institute, which is in the Washington, D.C. metro area. We offer support and education services, individual and group programs, and offer a lot of wraparound services like fitness programs and stress reduction programs. We offer programs for children's, teens, and parents. We offer about 200, well, before COVID-19, about 200 programs per month, now probably about 90, and all free of charge due to generous donations from our community. We have a couple of fee-based offerings, acupuncture, massage, and psychiatry. But again, we really want these services to be available to everybody, and Life with Cancer serves people no matter where they are treated. So today we're talking about the power of connection. We're going to set the stage with some definitions, roles, and research. Again, just kind of some foundation, and then I'm going to offer the first experiential exercise. And then we're going to explore the body's reaction to connection. So what kind of happens when we're connecting, as well as to stress and emotions. And then we'll look at how to explore and leverage the body's reaction to connection to support coping, looking at the role of connection in health and well-being, giving a brief overview of the nervous system so you have kind of an idea of how this might work, so you don't just kind of have to take my word for it. And then we might kind of flip the idea of self-care on its head, because I know it's not the most popular thing, and even if it was, it's just really hard to make time for it. So kind of playing with that a little bit, and then we'll look at some strategies and tools and try one of those tools. So who is a caregiver? Just kind of asking yourself this question: how do you know you are a caregiver? It seems pretty simple. It's like, I just am. Or as Brian suggested, it's something that you're being asked to do that needs to be done, and so you just step up and do it. There's often not a choice in that. Is it about the tasks that you do, or about the need of another, your loved one? Is it about the relationship? Brian really spoke to the relationship and how dear his wife was to him, and how that was such a big component of it, right? So the cancer support community and lots of other resources kind of talk about the definition of who is a caregiver in this way: anyone who provides physical, emotional, financial, or logistical support. So it's kind of the tasks that we were talking about, to support a loved one, very much speaking to that relationship, right? For them to be a loved one, there needs to be a relationship. And to a loved one with a chronic, disabling, or life-threatening illness. And that really speaks to the need. But I want to ask you in this moment, thinking to yourself, what aspect of this motivates you in your role as caregiver? Because sometimes if we look to what motivates us, we can also look to where there's a lot of power and strength. And so I want to look here to a quote from Rosalind Carter: there are only 4 kinds of people in the world: those have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers. So this really speaks to the common humanity of caregiving, right? We're all going to be in one of those boxes at some point in our life, probably more than once, and potentially more than one box at a time, right? So caregiving really is a common human experience. And one of the theorists that we're going to talk about today kind of posits the idea that maybe Darwin had it a little bit off. Maybe it's not the power of, or the survival of the fittest. Maybe it was the survival of the most connected that allowed us to survive and evolve. And so kind of thinking about that connection, and we're going to be looking at how our body supports that connection. So looking at the roles of a caregiver, I feel like this is something that you all, if we were all in a room together, you all could share with me, right? But I think what's important here is to think about all of the resources, all of the internal resources that are needed to support all of these roles. So, you know, energy, time, knowledge, persistence, I'm guessing a whole lot of patience as you're kind of heading one direction and then you need to change directions, or you're hopeful or concerned, right? Lots of patience. And so thinking about how to bring those internal resources to bear. And a lot of that has to do with what's inside of all of us and getting in touch with and tapping into some of those even deeper internal resources so that we can then carry on and do those roles, those challenging and important and meaningful roles that are asked of you as caregivers. And so kind of what the research says about caregivers, we just kind of heard so much and looked so much at the roles, is that often with all of these roles and expectation, and Brian kind of mentioned this in his introduction, that you often feel unprepared for these roles, and in that neglecting one's own health in the process of caregiving. And like survivors, the numbers of caregivers are growing. And so just kind of taking a moment to note if any of that resonates with you, but I'd really like to call your attention to this last bullet here, that the well-being of survivors and their caregivers often parallel each other. So just thinking about that for a moment. I mean, it's kind of research saying what we already know, that as human beings, we're connected, right? And what happens to me affects you and vice versa, because we're in this together. And so acknowledging that, not as a place for blame or for looking for problems, but as a place of opportunity. And that's really what I'm hoping to do today. And so with all of those roles and expectations and this feeling of feeling ill-prepared, it's not unexpected that there would be even more intense feelings of helplessness, potentially even loss of control or isolation. And so again, today's talk is really going to focus on learning a little bit about our body so that we understand how this all works, but then learning how we can kind of turn on those internal resources that are within all of us to connect and to provide care for ourselves and for our loved ones. So I'm going to stop showing my slides here for a second and just kind of, this is normally where I would open things up to a discussion, but instead I'd like to take a moment to honor your struggle, for you to honor your struggle. And a struggle doesn't imply weakness. It's often an opportunity for demonstration of strength, which is kind of bringing to mind a time that was particularly challenging or had a lot of feelings. And just allowing that to be present with you in this moment. And now I'd like to invite you to welcome the compassionate thoughts and words that a loved one might share with you if you shared that challenge with them. We're going to move into a meditation now, a meditation that's available on YouTube by Kristen Neff. She's a world-renowned compassion researcher. And we're going to talk about the science and all of that afterwards. But in this moment, I would like to my intention of offering this is for you to offer yourself self-compassion in the midst of that struggle. You know, it doesn't have to be one or the other. So before we get started, I'd like you to just take a moment to notice how you're feeling right now. Maybe you haven't paused yet today to kind of check in. Maybe what thoughts are running through your head. Feeling also has to do with what you might feel in your body, any sensations you might notice, any emotions that you might be able to name, just kind of noticing as we move into this offering by Kristen Neff. And this offering is really designed, it's a tool that you can use in a real caregiving situation. You know, you don't have to do it as a meditation like we're going to do it today. But today I'm going to offer it more as a meditation. So in this moment, in this time, I invite you to close your eyes and just allow your attention to turn inward. And imagining yourself in a caregiving situation, maybe the one that just came to mind previously. Just allowing it to come up in your mind's eye. Normally you would do this in real life, but for now we're just going to imagine that we're there. And first, allow yourself to get in touch with some of the stress and difficulty of being a caregiver. It's hard. We often feel overwhelmed or tired. Allow yourself to feel all of your feelings, even if they're the ones you think you shouldn't be having, like anger or irritation. Just letting everything arise. So what I would like to do is first I'm going to say some words of equanimity to remind us that although we may seem superhuman, we all have our limitations. We are only human. Please just let these words drop into your awareness. Everyone is on their own life's journey. I'm not the cause of this person's suffering, nor is it completely within my power to make it go away, even though I wish I could. Moments like these are difficult to bear, and yet I will try to help if I can. Just letting those words settle into you. And starting to notice your breathing, particularly your in-breath. Noticing how the breath nourishes you, gives your body oxygen, gives it what it needs. And as you breathe in, imagine that you're breathing in compassion for yourself. You might also imagine a white or a golden healing light filling your body with each breath. And as you breathe in, breathing in care and concern for your own struggle and difficulty as a caregiver. Giving yourself what you need. And perhaps that's strength, courage, peace, or simply compassion. Breathe in for yourself. And then now focusing on the person you're caring for, the person who is suffering in some way. Call the image of this person to mind, what they're going through. And start to focus on the out breath. And as you breathe out, imagine you are breathing out compassion for the other, their suffering and difficulty. You might imagine that as you breathe out, you're filling their body with a golden healing light. Using the breath metaphorically to send your well wishes so that they have what they need: acceptance, peace, kindness. And then bringing both together so that as you breathe in for yourself. And as you breathe out for the other. So in for me and out for you. One for me and one for you. And if you like, you can adjust the ratio. So maybe your stress fatigue is really coming up for you. So you can breathe in more for yourself. 4 for me, 1 for you. Maybe 10 for me, 10 for you. Or if the suffering of the person you're caring for is really salient, feel free to breathe out more for the other. Just making sure that you always include both yourself and the other in your breathing, in your circle of compassion. Remembering that the source of this compassion is unlimited, a vast, boundless ocean, more than enough for you and for the person you're caring for. Once more, remembering the words of wisdom. Everyone is on their own life's journey. I am not the cause of this person's suffering, nor is it completely within my power to make it go away, even though I wish I could. Moments like these are difficult to bear, and yet I will try to help if I can. And gently bringing your awareness back to yourself, to any sensations that you may be having. Noticing any thoughts that are present, or maybe that aren't. Any emotions that are relevant. And gently bring your awareness kind of back to the room, maybe back to the screen. And so when Kristen Neff delivers this meditation, she says, this is the practice. And again, you don't have to practice it as a meditation. You can just use the breath as a vehicle for your compassion in an actual caregiving situation. But always just remembering equanimity. We care so much, we want so much to help others, but we are human. And if we embrace that humanity and that vulnerability with compassion, everyone benefits. So thank you for taking the time to take care of yourself in that minute. And I'd also like to offer you congratulations. You may not know it, but you just changed the internal chemistry of your body. Did you know that you were that powerful? And so with that, we're going to jump back into the slides and talk a little bit about how that happens. So this is the link for the meditation by Kristen Neff. And so thinking about what just happened with that, right? When we encounter a difficult situation, I think most of us, I can definitely throw myself into this bucket. Most of us punish ourselves, right? And when we punish ourselves, that inner critic gets going and it sort of activates the part of our nervous system that says there's something wrong, there's a threat out there. And so what we know about that part of our nervous system is that it stops us from learning, and it stops us and can decrease our resiliency. It's important, it gets us moving, but then it also has these added kind of downsides. But when we're able to engage in situations that are challenging and speak to ourselves with love and kindness, it engages a part of our nervous system that sort of soothes that other sort of fight or flight part of our nervous system. And then when this happens, it builds resilience. When we practice self-compassion, it builds resilience, reduces stress, and even can increase our immune response. So it's really changing biology when we practice these practices. And I also kind of want to give a little nod to that inner critic. What does the inner critic say about self-compassion? What was it like for you when you tried to offer yourself that compassion while we were just doing that meditation? Did anybody have any inner critics that were sounding the selfish alarm, or this is useless or silly? Just kind of noticing if any of that's coming up. And I'm hoping to have some things to offer that self-critic as we keep going, but just noticing if that's coming up for you. So in caregiving, I think that we often tend to think about a one-sided arrow, right? I have the care and I'm giving it to you. But the truth is that all relationships are bi-directional, right? They ebb and flow, they give and take, they move back and forth. And that's very true in the caregiving relationship as it is in any other. And the research bears this out. So if you look at this bottom citation here, it says the mental health of partners of women with breast cancer correlates positively, means moves with the anxiety, depression, fatigue, and symptom distress of women with breast cancer. So what that's saying is that if a woman with breast cancer is experiencing a lot of different symptoms, chances are her caregiver is going to experiencing those symptoms as well. But it also says that these effects are bi-directional, right? It moves both ways. And so this is kind of what we know, right? We're connected. And we're going to explore this connection. So it's not a place of blame, but a place where we can engage and create change. So this is all based on the polyvagal theory by Stephen Porges. And he is the theorist who kind of posited that idea that maybe the way our body evolved actually helped us survive because it helped us stay connected. And actually, believe it or not, he was studying heart rate. But what he found was that there was a neurobiological mechanism that links social behavior and mental and physical health. And I think we kind of get that social and emotional health go together, but I think we often don't connect the idea that it might also be involved in our physical health. And what he found is that regulators of our physiology, of what's happening in our body, are embedded in our relationships. So if you look at some of these pictures on the side, like we get that mom is soothing baby there, but when they looked at what was happening in mom's body, is actually she was being soothed by the baby as well. So when the baby cooed or settled, it would regulate her nervous system. And we're kind of seeing this in the second image, right? You can kind of see mom picking up on the emotion of the baby. And notice that there are also some animals in these pictures. This is true for all mammals, that there are these regulators embedded in our relationships. So it might kind of speak to our fond relationships with our pets. And that our nervous systems are sort of designed to have this be synchronous in real time and reciprocal, again, moving back and forth, moving in both directions. So to kind of play with this and think about it for yourself is, can you think of a person or a pet that you feel particularly close to? Somebody or a pet that you feel very warm about, that you feel very close, loved. Just bring that person to mind. And kind of imagine being in their presence. Can you imagine their smile or their show of affection? And as you think about them, do you notice any changes in yourself? Does anything happen in your face? Maybe a little smile, maybe brighter eyes. That is the power of connection. And in that, you're changing physiology. You just did it again. It's really powerful. And this is possible when there's an experience of safety. And so we're going to talk about the mechanism of how this happens later, but acknowledging that there's part of our biology that is designed to keep us connected. And when we're connected, it allows us to feel safe and close. And so kind of looking at this image in the upper left-hand corner, this lion licking the deer's head, there's kind of nothing that the deer should be okay with in that situation, right? A predator is licking its head, and yet those animals look very comfortable. And the idea is that their nervous systems, without language, these animals might have sounds, but they don't have language, were able to communicate to each other whether or not they were safe to approach. And when they were safe to approach, that this enabled their bodies to get into a physiological state that supports growth and health and restoration and healing, really powerful kind of long-term needs of our body and of survival. And it optimizes the ability to rest and relax, sleep and digest, the things that I think both as care partners and that we all want, right? And enabling feelings of trust and safety and love that not only feel good, but they also confront those feelings of isolation, which are so common in the caregiving experience. And let's kind of dive down a little bit more into that perception of safety. Safety is not, I mean, when looking at it from a physiological standpoint, safety is not just the removal of threat. Safety is the addition of some cues of safety. And often those cues are cues of connectedness. They're social cues. They're the cues that I'm desperately missing as I give this presentation to a screen, right? It's the smile, the facial expressions, or the head nod that kind of lets me know that I'm connecting and this is landing, right? We need that to know how we're connecting. And the other piece of this is the prosody of voice. And so what I mean by that is sort of the sing-songy nature of the voice. Think about a mother singing to her baby. There's sort of this, or parent, it doesn't have to be a mother, a loved one, but there's sort of this rise and fall and rise and fall. And sort of the idea is that our physiology comes to expect this rise and fall. And when that expectation is met again and again, it's very soothing and very comforting. And it allows us to immobilize without fear, which I think is kind of a fancy way of saying relax. We're able to relax and feel safe. And so we've kind of looked at that side of the coin, right? What happens when there's the power of connection, when the body perceives safety? The body's priority at this time is health and restoration and connection, a lot of these long-term needs. But the other side of that coin is the stress response, when the body perceives danger or life threat. And the body's priority at that time is to survive and stay safe. And it would be pretty easy here to say, like, there's one that I want to be and one that I don't want to be. But the truth is we really need both. We'd really be in trouble if our body wasn't helping us stay safe. The challenge is that we want to be moving. We want to be able to move back and forth and kind of not get stuck. So let's spend a moment talking about stress. So stress is any circumstance that's perceived as a threat or a challenge. And this is pretty important because especially in caregivers research, they really show that it's not the intensity of the caregiving situation or what the needs are of the care recipient that have to do with the well-being of the caregiver, that it's really more about the assessment of the caregiver and their assessment of the situation that predicts their well-being. So again, that assessment is really important because what I think might be stressful or difficult might not be at all stressful or difficult to somebody else. Also acknowledging that not all stress is bad, right? Some degree of stress is vital for our survival. It's what's allowed us to evolve, but it's also what allows us to create and engage in life and to do those things that might be challenging but have great outcomes, right? Some stress is needed. Just a comic to kind of bring this idea of assessment home, right? It says, don't panic, I'm just a sore throat. And we get this in the realm of cancer, right? That once there's been this backdrop of cancer, that we see physical ailments differently, right? That's always the thing that's on kind of top of the line there. So our assessment and our previous experiences and how we dealt with them or what resources we had available are all relevant to that assessment. Just kind of spending a moment pulling apart emotions versus stress, because I don't at all want to be able to say that all emotions are stressful. They're not. Emotions really are physiological events with a purpose. Believe it or not, it doesn't feel like they have a purpose, right? They don't feel very good, so we'd like to say that they have no purpose. But sadness brings us together. And anger can often point to something that's unfair and might motivate us to try and change the situation so it's more balanced. And fear, its role is in protection. And so stress really has to do with a belief that we might not have the resources that we need to manage that emotion or manage that situation. And so in noticing that it's a belief, we also have some say in those beliefs, and our experiences help shape those beliefs. And so as we move on and start talking about what we can do about this, we are talking about addressing some of those beliefs. So to understand how this all happens, we need to do just kind of a real quick and dirty little discussion about the nervous system. So again, you don't have to take my word for it, how this all happens, but you kind of know some of the players. Neuroception is a concept of the polyvagal theory, and it really is sort of like our body's radar. And so if you can imagine this radar spinning, and each blip that comes up, the body is sort of assessing, right? It's saying safety, safety, danger, life threat, danger, safety. And when these things are coming up, it's creating physiological environments that help our body survive depending on what it's kind of assessed as the situation. And so it's trying to set up our body for the most success in that situation, acknowledging that this is not a voluntary act. It's happening kind of before it gets up to your brain. So not thinking that this is something that we can control with our thinking, and also acknowledging that oftentimes this radar is off. It just gets it wrong. And the reason is because if it gets it wrong and there's no threat, well, you might feel uncomfortable, but otherwise, in terms of survival, no harm, no foul. But if it gets it wrong and there is a threat and you don't do anything to protect yourself, well, there is a foul there and it might affect survival. And so I'd really rather err on the side of safety. And so that's where us as evolved human beings can kind of say to our body, like, okay, I'm picking up that signal. I need to be paying attention. But I've assessed the situation and I believe that I'm safe. And so now I'm going to take a deep breath to help calm down. And so what this acts on is your autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system, just like sounds, is pretty automatic, although we can have a play in there that we're going to talk about. And it's made up of the sympathetic nervous system, which is sort of the gas pedal of the nervous system, and the parasympathetic nervous system, or the brake. And so I want to play with this a little bit. Again, I'm going to stop my slides so that we can play with this. So I'd like you to bring to mind a time where you were a little bit nervous or scared. And so on the realm of 0 to 10, 0 being I'm not scared at all, to 10 being I was horrified, like a 1 to a 3, right? We're not going into the land of being horrified. We're talking about a little bit scared. And so seeing if you can bring, kind of a moment in time where you felt scared into your mind's eye. And think about the environment that you were in. Who was with you, if anyone? Was it day or night? Where were you? What could you hear? What could you see? Just allowing yourself to stay in that moment. Now taking a nice deep breath in. Remember, I'm the only one that can be seen, and audibly sigh out. And another deep breath in. And an audible sigh out. So just kind of noticing. Did you experience anything in your body there as you brought that challenging moment to mind? Maybe a change in your heart rate, or maybe some heat somewhere in your body, or maybe a change in your breath. Again, you're seeing that you might be quite good at affecting the physiology of your body, right? This is the activity of that autonomic nervous system. And the part of our nervous system that kind of gets us up and going, that brings on that heart rate, that brings on that heat, is our sympathetic nervous system. So that's sort of the fight or flight system. It gets our body ready. It tends to be focused on short-term needs. So it's going to get our body ready to fight or to flee. Our heart, our lungs, our muscles, our senses. This is really relevant with pain, right? Because pain has to do with a sensation. And so when we're in this activated state, we might feel more pain. But again, it's focused on short-term needs. It's not focused on long-term needs. From your body's perspective, it doesn't really care if it's got a germ that's going to cause a disease and your immune system's not fighting it, if it's going to be eaten by a tiger, right? Or same thing with digestion. And so it's really focused on these short-term needs. The other kind of the complementary system is the parasympathetic nervous system. And this is the nervous system, or the part of the nervous system that helps us rest and digest and kind of move back to balance. It acts as a brake on that sympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system is very active and the brake kind of sits down on top of it. And it brings digestion and immune system and our higher thinking back online. And this is what we activated when we used the sigh, right? We kind of called up the parasympathetic nervous system and said, help us with this. And so how these players work together, in defense and in safety, so in both situations, and this is a dynamic and effective process. And that it's dynamic is probably its most important component. The challenge is when we kind of get stuck, right? When we get stuck in this sense of danger, and then our body's not able to do some of that long-term work that it needs. And so again, it's really easy to say that, we don't need defense, we do, but we would like to spend more time in the place of safety. But the truth of life, and certainly the truth of caregiving and managing advanced disease, is that there are a lot of stresses that come, and there are a lot of really challenging situations. And so we might need to be intentional about how we kind of invite our body to use that parasympathetic response, to use that soothing and calming response. And as we kind of talked about before, that caregivers and their care partners tend to do a lot of these things together. So it might not just be the benefit for you. It might also be the benefit for the caregiver or for your loved one. So kind of with this idea, combining this research that caregivers and their care partners, or caregivers and their care recipients kind of have similar symptoms, and they tend to move together. Thinking about self-care more as the idea of caring for the pair, looking at self-care from the lens of relationships and the power of that relationship on physiology, kind of helping your body be in a state where it's receptive to connection and less reactive to challenge. And in this way, increasing resilience. And so to that inner critic that can say, this is silly and I don't have time for it, and this is just focused on me, this is not a selfish practice, right? This is decreasing the stress for you and your loved one. As we know, again, you are connected, and that can bring about physiological changes for both of you, and a sense of connection, that can lead to physical or emotional intimacy. And when there's this presence of intimacy, it affects our communication. It affects how we deal with each other, potentially easing, stressful logistical situations, which, come up all the time, but certainly in the realm of caregiving, and potentially lay the foundation for difficult conversations. Again, conversations that are needed in any intimate relationship, but definitely in a caregiving relationship. So now we're finally there. We're finally to the place where we're going to talk about how to do this. We've laid all the background. And so now, how do we leverage that mind-body connection? So where do we start? Does our brain listen to our body, or does our body listen to our brain? I challenge you to come up with an answer to that question. Again, you're on your own in your own space. Yes, it is kind of a trick question. Both are true, right? We can kind of think about this as a bottom-up way of processing and a top-down way of processing. I think top-down is the more common and sort of the more conventional. It's the idea that, a stress comes in, it comes into our brain. This older part of our brain, kind of evolutionarily speaking, the limbic system activates. It's the emotional part of our brain, and it sends out a bunch of hormones and other chemical messengers to a bunch of glands in our body that says, go, 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 turn on, right? We need to be able to deal with whatever that threat is, be it emotional. It doesn't know if it's an email or a tiger, right? Our nervous system was developed a long time ago. And so activate, go, and it sends out all this cortisol. This can happen in less than a second, but it can take hours for it to recover and to kind of feed back to the brain saying that everything's okay. And so you can imagine in the caregiving experience, and really even in real life, right, that stresses can come faster than that. And so again, it sort of argues for ways to help our body move back into that more soothing response. And so another way to view this is a bottom-up view of stress. And a big player in this is the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve really is the mechanism that I made reference to before. This mechanism, this neurobiological mechanism that kind of provides the link between our social, emotional, and physical well-being. The vagus nerve is part of the parasympathetic nervous system, part of that soothing or calming or brake part of our nervous system. It mostly goes from our viscera, from our belly and our organs and things like that up to our brain. When they've looked at the fibers of this nerve, about 80% of them are traveling from the body up to the brain. And then the ones that move out, so the ones I was just talking about kind of moving up from the body to the brain are those yellow ones in the picture. And the ones that move out are moving out into the face. So those are the orange lines that you can see on this image. And so this is really kind of the idea. These are all those social cues, right? Those cues of connection. It's sort of like what's happening in our gut, in our belly, is being shown on our face so that other animals or other people know if we're safe to approach. And so it's kind of like it's playing out on our face. That's how that deer and that lion might know that it's safe to approach each other. This is our gut reaction, right? This is like, you just know. So if you think about this for yourself, kind of pre-COVID-19, if you went to a party and you didn't really know anybody and you were sort of scanning the room and you were like, I want to go talk to that person, but I really don't want to go talk to that person. That's the vagus nerve, right? That's that gut response. Or if you go to a doctor's office, say, and maybe they don't even give you information that you find particularly helpful, but you leave going, man, I really liked that person, right? That's your vagus nerve kind of giving you this neuroception. Or you've just had a really difficult day. It's been really stressful and you're sitting there with your pet and you're just petting them. You're just kind of hanging out, right? And then eventually you notice you're feeling better. That's the activity of this nerve. Okay, and so we're going to talk about how to do this on purpose. So one way of kind of informal practices, and I very intentionally chose these first because, right, in caregiving we don't have a lot of time to kind of commit to a personal practice, right? So these are really designed to be things that you can be doing kind of in the midst of your everyday. And so an informal breath practice is a lot like what we did when we thought of the challenging situation, right? An audible sigh. That might be hard to do in the presence of others. Maybe that feels a little weird, but even just a nice, big, deep breath, an intentional deep breath, and slowing things down can have a really nice effect on your nervous system. The sigh is just a really nice reboot. Also, we've realized that, you know, and talked about how there are all these nerves in our bodies that talk to our brain and our face, and that what's happening to our brain and our face also affects our bodies. And so connecting and having time with your loved ones is also really important. And not, you know, we tend to kind of live next to our loved ones often, but, you know, sharing a meal and talking about that experience of sharing a meal, or even a movie and talking about it afterwards. A particular drive, what do you see when you're in the car together, right? Really finding times to connect and maybe even laugh, and time with friends. You know, laughter is so powerful, and again, so soothing to the nervous system, and sort of activating all of those social cues of safety. And this next one might be a little bit odd to think about, but listening to music with higher melodic tones. And the reason is that the vagus nerve acts on the muscles in our ears. And when we're in a sense of danger, in a physiological sense of danger, our ears, the muscles change so that we hear lower predatory sounds, maybe a growl or something like that. Or this kind of explains when you go to the doctor's office and, you know, they said your name and then you don't hear anything that they say after that, right? Your body is cueing into sounds of kind of predatory sounds. And so it's not hearing that higher pitch, because when we're in a sense of safety, the musculature changes so that we can hear higher pitch, which is normally where speech is. And so when we listen to music with higher tones, not only are we getting that prosody, right, that rise and fall and sort of that expectation. I tend to think of like female folk music, but we're also getting, we're asking our ears to focus in on that higher tone. And when we're doing that repeatedly, we're asking our body to move to a physiological state of safety. So that's how it kind of works as like an intervention, actually. Nature is also very soothing for our nervous system. And I know with COVID-19, it can be really hard. And same thing with connecting with friends, right? It's all really hard. And the video helps, but also keep in mind what we talked about with prosody of voice. You know, even through earbuds, you can really connect to what's happening with somebody's voice. So there are still ways to connect even in this kind of realm of disconnection, this current situation. So kind of jumping back to nature, nature is also very soothing for our nervous system. It might be hard to find, but even kind of accidental parts of nature. So the tree outside your window, or, you know, even if just walking outside and looking up and seeing the sky, really intentionally looking at the sky. or really enjoying that house plant and kind of spending a moment to just really look at it and attend to it. Another thing that can kind of go with the experience of nature, but is a good tool anywhere, is noticing your five senses. So, you know, let's say that you're outside and you just kind of take a moment and say to yourself, what can I see? You know, you're gonna have a busy mind, it's gonna be active, but what can I see? You know, what can I see? And then what can I hear? What can I smell, and what can I taste, and what can I touch, right? Moving through all of those senses and just allowing you to kind of connect to the present moment. And so there are also formal practices, but again, I don't want this to be a place where you kind of say, I should do all these things to yourself. You have a lot on your plate as caregivers. And so just knowing that these are out there and available to you, but again, not kind of putting that should requirement on yourself. More formal breath practices can be really helpful. I should also say these top 5 or 6 bullet points here can be really helpful. There are lots of apps out there that can be helpful. So Calm, Headspace, Insight Timer, Meditation Studio, right? They can really guide you through some of these practices. But a breath practice is really acting on that parasympathetic nervous system. It's kind of saying, I hear that there's danger out there, but I've assessed the situation and I think it's okay. And so I'm going to intentionally slow down my breath. You can increase your inhale to kind of build more energy. You can increase your exhale to kind of bring on relaxation. You can pause in between, I'm going to, pause in between your breath. Lots of different options to kind of play with your breath. And again, you can use apps to do that. Meditation is another thing to play with. I think there's often a misconception around meditation that we're going to sit and our mind is just going to be empty. And if we can't do that, we can't meditate. Well, one type of meditation is sort of emptying our mind, but there's lots of other types of meditation. And it's really about finding the ability to focus. And so when your mind runs off, as kind of good, busy minds do, is kind of saying, okay, yeah, I see that you're over there, and come back to the thing that I'm trying to pay attention to. And that thing might be your breath. It might be your movement. It might be physical sensations. But just, it's really about kind of finding those anchors. And loving kindness or compassion exercises can be that same way. You're coming back to that sensation of compassion. Mindfulness is the idea of being more aware, paying attention, and really the hardest part with mindfulness is the non-judgment, right? We have so many rules running around in our head. And so how to allow ourselves to just be present with where we are, and that present might be scared, and that present might be content, and that present might be fearful, and all of those sensations are fine. It's just about noticing them. Relaxation is another, and mindfulness can often lead towards relaxation, but its goal isn't relaxation. And relaxation really is sort of the direct purpose of trying to relax the body. Compassion meditation and exercises like loving kindness and self-compassion, like we did, can build resilience and kind of change physiology. And then these last 3 are also 3 formal practices that maybe community organizations like Life with Cancer or other organizations in your community can help provide. Exercise has a lot to do with physiological regulation. Tai Chi and Qigong, especially when used in movement forms, combine sort of movement with breath practice like yoga, and counseling too, right? Kind of being aware of the connection of all of this through counseling, kind of your thoughts and what's going on there. So now we're going to try one of these. And I chose to try a breath practice primarily because breath really is the foundation, and it's of so many of the practices I just spoke about. And it's sort of in direct conversation with that parasympathetic nervous system. And so for this last experiential exercise, I'd like you to, again, just kind of sit back into your chair, allow your attention and your focus to gently move towards yourself. You can invite your eyes to close, but you don't have to close your eyes. Just allow your gaze to soften. And again, allow that awareness to move more internal. Bringing that awareness to your top of your head. And we're going to move down through the body, just noticing Just noticing any sensations that are there, trying not to decide which ones are good or bad or should be there or shouldn't be there, but just noticing. Starting with the top of your head and the rest of your scalp and your face, and your ears and your jaw. And your neck, your shoulders, and your arms and your hands, just noticing. Not trying to change anything. Moving to the front of your body, your chest, and your belly, and your back, your low back, your pelvis, your legs, your lower legs, and your feet. Now bringing your awareness to that gentle movement that's happening in your body, kind of without you needing to do anything. Just noticing where you feel that movement. Maybe your ribs, your back, your belly, or maybe even feeling the movement of the air through your nose. Up until this point, we haven't tried to change anything. Just noticing. Now I invite you to bring one hand up onto your chest and one onto your belly. And just noticing that movement with your hands there. Are they moving in rhythm? Is one moving and then the other? Can you feel your heartbeat? And then inviting your breath kind of towards that lower hand. So as you breathe in, thinking of expanding your belly into the warmth of your lower hand. And as you exhale, gently letting it relax away from that hand. Just kind of sipping the air behind that top hand and down into the belly. Expanding the balloon of the belly and letting it fall. Again, sipping the air in almost through a straw. Filling up the balloon of the belly and letting it relax. And just sticking with this for 3 or 4 more cycles of breath. And then again, gently bringing your awareness to the top of your head. And you can relax your arms. Just moving from the top of your head down to your feet, just noticing any sensations in your face and jaw, neck, shoulders, arms, torso, legs, feet. inviting some gentle movement into your fingers and your toes. And just gently inviting your awareness to kind of move back out again, moving toward the computer or whatever else is happening in your room. And so I'd really like to invite you to honor the power of the connection to your loved one. And that in this connection to your loved one, between the two of you, you have the power to regulate the physiology of your body, not from a state of control, but just from a state of engagement. And that with that can have emotional wins, like feelings of love and safety and trust. And maybe there are some relational benefits as well, like increased intimacy and maybe less conflict. And that when you honor that connection with your loved one, you also honor the connection with yourself. And when you do that, you unlock those internal resources that can help you build that patience and strength and perseverance and dedication that is so needed in a caregiving experience. And building on the belief that you can manage the uncertainty and the challenges that come with the role that are being asked of you. And so through experiencing these experiences, you can learn that I can deal with what comes. And understanding that as you try this and as you engage in this, that it also influences your loved one, not just their emotional experience, not that we should say that that's not much, but also their physical experience. And so with that, I encourage you to think about one of those informal practices that we talked about earlier, and think about what you could try this week, right? So with that, I'd like to conclude. If you have any questions or comments, please do not hesitate to reach out. I love connecting with people. Here is my contact information. And here are my references for the material that I presented today.